Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this edition of the Light the W podcast. It is your favorite Seattle Mariners podcast where we cover all things Mariners baseball. If this is your first time joining us on the show or you're a returner, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already on YouTube, or you can find us at Light the W, a Seattle Mariners podcast. Or if you want to listen to the audio version, go to Spotify or your preferred podcast platform, where I would love it if you could leave a 5-star review and follow on those platforms. It supports the show and the channel greatly, and it's greatly appreciated. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at LightTheWPod. And finally, without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
The pitch from Acevedo.
Swung on the line, down the left field line for a base hit.
Fly ball, gap, right center field.
Double him up at second.
Luke is going back to the 1-8 track. Get out the right, Brennan Mustard, grandma. It is grand salami time.
Polanco sent it in the right and will send Seattle to the American League Championship Series for the first time in 24 years.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 105 of the Light the W podcast. Time of recording is 1:20 p.m. on Monday, December 22nd. We are a few days away from Christmas, and Santa Jerry has not done much of anything. Today, I want to look at 3 right-handed hitters that the Mariners could look to acquire should they acquire another left-handed bat like a Brendan Donovan, and maybe even without that. Thank you guys so much for listening. Episode 105 starts now. Okay, so I have 3 bats that I want to look at. We have talked a bunch this offseason about a bunch of left-handed bats that fit at a corner infield spot, that fit at second base, that fit as a DH. Even briefly, we've talked about potential right field options. Today, I'm going to look at a third baseman, a guy that is a third baseman and a DH, and maybe even a little bit of first base. Those two guys eerily similar in terms of positional sort of location. And then we'll look at a outfielder that has widely been discussed for the Mariners at the past 2 trade deadlines, both, especially 2 years ago. And that one comes slightly from the signing of a guy named Munetaka Murakami. We talked about Munetaka Murakami and Kazuma Okamoto a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And we talked about both of their fits with the Seattle Mariners. We talked about Murakami, big whiff, big strikeout, but he does have some generational raw power that can develop if he develops that hit tool just a little bit better. He goes to the Chicago White Sox on a 2-year deal, which means the Mariners are out on it, of course. But Kazuma Okamoto's still on the market. And could the Mariners be interested there? So let's look at Kazuma Okamoto one more time. We are going to look at the past 3 seasons in Japan for Kazuma Okamoto, give some brief notes, and then we'll compare him to one Seiya Suzuki's stats over the Pacific in Japan. These are 2 Japanese hitters, and Okamoto is a free agent this offseason. Already 29 years old, Okamoto is a right-handed hitter, which is why I think he might be an interesting fit for this Mariners team in their infield. Currently, as we sit, the Mariners infield is as follows. Josh Naylor at first base, that's a left-handed hitter. Cole Young at second base, that's another left-handed hitter. And that's a sophomore seasoned guy that we don't know what he's going to be able to do in general, and specifically against left-handed pitching, where you really don't want to expose him a whole lot. J.P. Crawford, of course, left-handed hitter at shortstop. He will be slotted in there in 2026. And then third base sounds like it'll be a mixture of Ben Williamson, a right-handed hitter, and Colt Emerson, a left-handed hitter, both of whom will be rookies. So you have two spots right now in your infield that are going to be rookies that you don't know a whole lot of what to expect. You get a full season of Josh Naylor, which is a huge addition for this Mariners lineup that we talked about when that acquisition happened nearly probably 2 months ago now. But third base is an interesting spot. Colt Emerson has been developed as a shortstop. He is a shortstop in terms of what he's done in the minors and in terms of his prospect status. This is a guy that hasn't played third base much, if at all, in the minor league levels because he should stick at shortstop once he gets to the major league level. That said, currently in 2026, he is blocked at shortstop by J.P. Crawford. People like Jason Churchill of Baseball Things have mentioned whether trading J.P. Crawford could be an interesting idea. This is a thought that I've tracked and I've had a little bit myself. That's not what today's episode is about, though. Third base is still a hole for the Mariners, especially as a right-handed hitter, because Ben Williamson, as we know, is an elite glove, but we don't know what we're going to get from the bat. And alongside that, there's a DH spot that we don't know who is going to slot in there right now. Right now, currently, if opening day were tonight, it'd be Dominic Canzone, it'd be Luke Raley, and Victor Robles. It'd be two of those guys in a mix of right field and DH. Right? So bringing in another option that could play in the infield and could play at DH and hit at DH, specifically one that is a right-handed hitter, might make a lot of sense. This is where I think Kazuma Okamoto is a fit, because he is a right-handed hitter that can play first base for Josh Naylor if Naylor needs a couple days off, or if it's a really tough lefty, or if you just want to give Naylor a DH day. He can also play third base. He's not going to be an everyday third baseman, that's what scouts believe at least. But he could definitely play there when you need him to. If you want to give Williamson or Emerson a day off, or if those two guys don't end up working. And also, you could play him at DH against lefties or righties, but specifically against lefties, when you don't trust a Dominic Canzone or a Luke Raley. Now, here comes the conversation about Luke Raley, where what do we expect from Luke Raley? Do we think he's going to be his 2024 self? Again, now that he's not, hopefully won't be injured in 2026. But currently, as the Mariners sit, you have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, I would say, spots in your lineup that you know kind of what you're going to get. And that's Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, Cal Raleigh, of course, Josh Naylor, and the half I'm going to give to J.P. Crawford because I don't really know what we're going to get from J.P. Crawford, but he's an established veteran, so I'll give him that half. The rest of your lineup are guys that either had a down year in 2025, are going to be a rookie, or had a good year in 2025, Dominic Canzone, but hasn't been that good prior to that in his career. Those are 5 spots where it's really up in the air what you are going to get from them. And then that also includes, of course, the DH position. Kazuma Okamoto allows you to shore up, hopefully, some of those spots. Now, what do we know we're going to get from Okamoto? That's the question, because, of course, he's coming over from Japan, which means in some ways he is basically a prospect in of himself. But already 29 years old, this is an experienced guy over in Japan that has played in the World Baseball Classic and seems to be the type of bat that the Mariners might look to acquire. This is a guy that in the majors ideally would hit somewhere in the 280 range, if not better, with an on-base above 360, 370, and would smack like 10 home runs for you. Be, a 115 WRC plus. This is a bat similar to that of Brendan Donovan, one that's not going to strike out a lot, one that'll walk a decent amount, about average in the majors. What can he do against velocity and stuff like that is the question, because, of course, like I said, coming over from Japan is a big leap. It's a leap that a prospect makes from really AAA to the majors. So you don't know what you can expect. But when you look at the numbers, this is a really exciting piece. Last year, he hit 327, 416, 598 in just about 70 games with a 210 WRC plus over in the NPB. Had 33 walks to 33 strikeouts, 15 home runs, 21 doubles. Of course, that's not a full season as he dealt with a few injuries, but it was a good season nonetheless. Year prior, 280, 362, 501, 27 home runs, 37 doubles, 143 games, 16% strikeout, about an 11% walk. The year prior was very similar to those numbers, except there were more home runs, which meant his power numbers went from 501 to 584 and in 3 less games. Let's compare that 2024 season to Seiya Suzuki's final year in the NPB before transitioning to the majors. 2021 was Seiya Suzuki's final year in the NPB, and now if you want a full breakdown of this guy, again, in similar fashion, go listen to episode 100 of the show, Murakami versus Okamoto. Okay, Seiya Suzuki in Japan, 317, 433, 639, a 195 WRC plus, 38 home runs, a 16% walk rate, and a 16.5% strikeout rate. Okamoto, slightly lower average, slightly lower on base, less slug, less homers, but a slightly lower strikeout percentage and a lower walk percentage. He is not as good as Seiya Suzuki, okay? That is just a fact. Seiya Suzuki was really damn good over in Japan. But that was also a really good year in Japan for Seiya Suzuki. In 2020, he hit 300, 409, 544, 158 WRC plus 25 homers, 14% on both strikeout and walk. That's more similar to that of Kazuma Okamoto. So other than the power, I actually think these guys, numbers-wise, look fairly similar. The difference is that Okamoto is more line drives, less fly balls, and home runs. Seiya Suzuki put up a 118 WRC plus in his first year with the Chicago Cubs in 2022. He had 14 homers, struck out 25% of the time, walked about 10% of the time, and hit 262, 336, 433. Okamoto's WRC plus won't be as high because he will not hit as many home runs. That is just a fact. His power is not going to be as high. But can you get a 105, 110 WRC plus from Okamoto? Because that in of itself for the Seattle Mariners would be a big and good addition. And that's a fact. The fit for Okamoto is mostly against left-handed pitching. And part of, I think, the piece of this that would be really exciting for the Mariners is that this is a guy that would fit your window of contention from 2026 to 2027 to 2028 and hopefully even beyond. But 2026 and 2027 are the two best years for the Seattle Mariners to compete for a goddamn World Series as it looks right now because of where your starting pitching is at. And Okamoto in 2026, you don't know totally what he's going to get, but 2027, he could be slightly better. The question that I will pose to you to think about is whether or not this is just another prospect that you're basically adding to the mix, and one that's already 29 years old and might not have a defensive spot in the same way that some of these other guys do. But he's still experienced, especially over in Japan, and could bring something that the Mariners might want and might need. So if you strike out on a Brendan Donovan, and then you don't go and get Ketel Marte, this could be a piece that is worthy of an addition for the Seattle Mariners. Because at this point, if you don't get one of those two guys that I aforementioned, you do need bats. And Okamoto is a good and solid option of a bat to add to your roster. The second guy I want to look at is Luis Robert Jr. of the Chicago White Sox, the team that The other Japanese corner infielder just went to Munetaka Murakami. Luis Robert Jr. We know what this guy can be. At his peak, he is a 150 WRC plus that hits 40 plus homers, is worth 5-ish wins, and hits 280, if not higher, while playing Gold Glove defense in center field. He has not developed into that player, to say the least. An 84 WRC plus these past 2 years. 2023 was his last good season where he was a 130 WRC plus worth nearly 5 wins. Struck out 29% of the time, walked 5% of the time, hit 38 home runs, 80 RBIs, hit 264, 315, 542. He was a 111 WRC plus the year before that in 98 games, 155 and 68. But this guy's dealt with injuries quite a few years of his career. Only 100 games in 2024, 110 this last year. And the Mariners have just made an addition. While we are recording, we are talking about right-handed hitters that crush left-handed pitching, and the Mariners just got a guy. So let's go away from Luis Robert, and let's go dial in on Rob Refsnyder. Rob Refsnyder is an outfielder that crushes left-handed pitching. He signs a 1-year deal with the Seattle Mariners per Jeff Passan, and let's dig into this guy. This is a guy that Lyle and TJ over at the Marine Layer podcast have looked at actually quite a lot. And this is a really nice addition on the fringes for the Mariners, and it's a second bat for them to get that now if you go get Brendan Donovan alongside that is 3 really fun bats that you added this offseason. Rob Refsnyder, 34 years old, a right-handed hitter, played with the Boston Red Sox last year. He was a 128 WRC plus last year, struck out 26-ish% of the time, walked 11.5% of the time, worth 1 singular win. He was a 128 WRC plus, like I said. He hit 9 home runs in 70 games, 209 plate appearances. Not going to steal a whole lot of bases, but the fun stuff is the splits. So let's go look at the splits for Rob Refsnyder. Against left-handed pitching, he had 7 home runs in 116 at-bats. He hit 302, 399, 560, a 959 WRC or OPS, and a 159 WRC plus, striking out 23% of the time and walking 14% of the time. We're not going to look at home and away splits. I don't care. He was just as good in the second half as he was in the first half. 129 WRC plus in the first half, 126 in the second half. What you want is what he does against left-handed pitching. And we're going to go look back at his now 2024 season. We'll start with what he did in that season as a whole. 2024, also with Boston. Hit 132 WRC plus that year. Hit 283, 359, 471, worth a win and a half. 11 home runs. Let's go look at the splits. Okay. In 2024, he hit 302, 393, 548 against left-handed pitching with a 161 WRC plus, 11% walk rate, 25% strikeout rate, 941 OPS. He hit 8 home runs, 7 doubles, and 126 at-bats. He also had 146 at-bats against right-handed pitching that year, where he was actually about average, a 105 WRC plus. He hit 267, 329, 404 with a 733 OPS. and he was playable against right-handed. Defensively, as I mentioned earlier, he's an outfielder. Let's go look at his DRS stats. Advanced fielding. 2025, he was average in left, basically average in center, and average in right. About an average defender overall, slightly below in 2024, but again, that's in Boston where the outfield is really quite funky. Let's go look at his Baseball Savants page. Rob Refsnyder is a Mariner. He doesn't actually have percentiles, but he is bright red in chase rates, bright red in hard hit rate, red in barrel percentage, bright red in average exit velocity, nice and red in walk percentage. He has a good arm in terms of strength, not the fastest guy, slightly below average and outs above average. But this is a guy that will hit the ball hard, is going to walk a solid amount above average, pretty much a good rate, almost 12% of the time. Not going to chase. He might whiff a little bit, which leads to a few strikeouts, but he's going to crush left-handed pitching, and that was something that this Mariners team desperately needed. We entered the episode talking about how the Seattle Mariners, in most senses, especially if they go add players, need to go get someone that can crush left-handed pitching. This is a guy that also can play first base if you need him to. He's done that in the past, and the Mariners listed him as an outfielder / first baseman when they announced this. 10-year veteran, a guy with postseason experience, with plenty of experience in general. Played the last 3 years in Boston. It's a really fun addition for this Mariners team, because we talked about how left-handed these guys are. This team is. And I didn't talk specifically about the outfield, but you talk about Luke Raley and Dom Canzone, those are likely your two best outfielders. Obviously, Victor Robles is in there, but if you want to go look at Victor Robles' stats, he hasn't exactly been a guy that has crushed left-handed pitching. What I will say is interesting about this addiction is that your outfield is very crowded. I'm just looking at Twitter to get more stuff. Apparently was a strong leader in the clubhouse for the Red Sox the last 3 or 4 years while he was there. And that's the thing that the Mariners really value, and that is it's a good addition. You're bringing in a guy that clubhouse value, that does something that your team doesn't do that well. But going back to the outfield, I want to go look at what Victor Robles did in 2024 as a whole, because he wasn't all that good against left-handed pitching, even as a right-handed hitter. He actually had reverse splits. Against left-handed pitching, he was a 98 WRC+, but he's a 164 against righties. So, you now have, we already talked about how there's 3 guys really for the DH and right field spots for the Mariners. Now there's 4. Now this guy is a bench guy that is going to platoon and hit against lefties and can be a nice pinch hitter for you. But it's going to be interesting to see the fit of Victor Robles and Luke Raley, especially. I think Dominic Canzone is the guy that honestly I feel best about in there right now. But I'm still not sure he's a sure thing. None of these guys are super great defensively. And they all bring something unique in terms of the hitting side. Rolling with Dominic Canzone and Rob Refsnyder would be a solid and fun right field position. But I'm not sure what the Mariners will do with Luke Raley and Victor Robles. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they traded at least one of them, if not both of them, in a deal. Especially if you want to bring in more pieces. I haven't seen what the money is for this signing yet. But a guy that crushes left-handed pitching is something that the Mariners really needed. 1 year, $6.25 million. So let's go look at Spotrac and the Mariners' budgets. Because this is another thing that I look at. Now we're just kind of winging this episode. It's going to be a longer one. In the middle of recording, we get the Mariners doing a signing. I think that's the first time that has happened. Seattle Mariners. Spotrac is acting up. Seattle Mariners. We think roughly that the Mariners had somewhere between $20 and $25 million to spend. This is a $6.25 million contract. Let's see. Okay, so they were at 152 projected by Spotrac. They should be at 158 and a half. 158 and a half. We think they have about $10 million more to spend. Let's look at Brendan Donovan. Because Brendan Donovan right now feels like the most likely guy the Mariners trade for. And Brendan Donovan is cheap in terms of payroll. Obviously, it's going to cost prospects, but he's cheap in terms of payroll. And for a guy that doesn't hit left-handed pitching all that well, these two guys actually make a lot of sense together. Refsnyder and Donovan do. Donovan is an ARB 2 guy, estimated to make about nearly $6 million. So, they will have space for Brendan Donovan, absolutely, should they go that route. Now, I was already talking about right-handed hitters and why the Mariners might want to go and acquire one. Now they've gone and acquired one. So what comes next, now that you've added Rob Refsnyder? Could Kazuma Okamoto still make sense for the Seattle Mariners? And Luis Robert, who I was talking about when this happened, now definitely does not make sense for the Mariners. So anything I said there, you can just cross out and say, no need for that. But Kazuma Okamoto could still make sense because you have especially a left-handed heavy infield. And many of your prospects hitting-wise coming up are left-handed hitters. That includes the Cole Youngs, the Cole Emersons, the Lazaro Montezes of the world. All left-handed hitters that hopefully, ideally, would be able to hit both sides, but you don't know, and you especially don't know in 2026. Okamoto still could make sense. Do I think he makes the most sense? No. But as a bounce-back option to a Brendan Donovan, I think it makes a lot of sense. And Santa Jerry has gifted us Rob Refsnyder a few days before Christmas. They needed a right-handed bat that crushed lefties, and they've needed that really for a few years. This balances out your team overall, adds something that you didn't have, and adds to an outfield that I've talked about them really needing to add to for a while. It does put your roster in a little bit of a weird spot, but trades happen, and it allows for a little bit more flexibility through the rest of this offseason. Now, that is all for today's episode. It was a wild and fun, actually, episode 105 of the Light the W podcast. This will release Tuesday morning, December 23rd. I will also have an episode out with Jeff on the morning of Christmas Eve. We will definitely be talking about Refsnyder, I am sure, and we will get Jeff's take on Refsnyder, and we'll probably dig into that even a little bit more. But we'll also talk about a few other things. Till then, though, make sure you like and subscribe and follow. Leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. And welcome to the Mariners, Rob Refsnyder. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. Till next time, as always, it's Mahal. Thank you guys so much for listening, and go M's. And